Hi, my name is Chris. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing CSS Battle Daily Target for June 29th, 2025. Okay, so as always, we want to figure out a general approach to how we're going to handle this. Then count all the elements and get those all in place. So the way I think that I want to do this today is we're going to set the body to grid, okay? And we're going to use grid on all four of these colors here. And then we're going to create another div that contains this semicircle, this full circle, and this semicircle. We're going to position that absolute so we can get it in the center here. And then we're also going to make this display flex so that we can get everything spaced out between these three elements. All right, so we're going to need 1, 2, 3, 4 divs for each one of these colors, 5 for these three elements, and then 1 for each of these. So 5, 6, 7, 8. So we need 6 elements. All right, so we're going to create 6 divs, and I use letters of the alphabet to label my elements. That will cut down on your code. Not descriptive, but not a best practice, but it helps increase your score in CSS Battle because your score is based on your percentage match and how many characters you used. So that helps with that. All right, so we're going to call this B, we're going to call this C, we're going to call this D. So we've got A, B, C, D. Great. Create another div. So this is going to be a container for the 3 white elements. And we're going to call this E. And then we need to put 3 elements inside of that. Okay. We're going to call this F. We're going to call this G. And since this is the same as that, we can get away with calling this F as well to cut down on our code. All right, so that's all we're going to need for the elements. So now we need to create a style tag. And first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the body. And since all of these elements go right up to the edge, what we're going to need to do, well, let me do this first. I'm going to call this display grid. And then we're going to define our rows and our columns. So we're going to say grid templates rows. Then what we're going to do is we're going to say 1 fraction and 1 fraction, right? So now we're dealing with, this row and this row. What the fraction is doing is it's taking the entire height here of the body and it's giving this, half of it and half of it because it's 1 fraction. So it's basically, 50%, 50%. If I were to add another one, or this would be easier, if I were to add 2 more, right? This would be 25%, 25%, 25%, 25%, right? And then we can do the exact same thing for the columns. Because we have the same thing going on there. Okay, so now let's go to A, and I use CSS attributes in CSS Battle. Not a great practice in real life, but we'll cut down on code as opposed, using that as opposed to class or ID, right? And we're simply just going to give it a background, not background color, to cut down on characters. This blue. Perfect. So now you see that by default, it's going to get put in the first row and the first column, okay? And B, going to get background, this green color, So now, since there's room in that first row, it's by default going to be the first row, but because this is taking up the first column, by default this is going to go to the second column. And then we're going to see the same thing here. Normally we would specify which grid, or which column, which row each element would be in, but because we set it up so nicely, we don't need to do that. And it cuts down on your code. And this will be the final one, which is this yellowish color. Cool, great. So we see the grid working perfectly and with minimal code. One issue that we're seeing, obviously, is this little white around there. So what that is the body in CSS Battle is going to have the default margin. I'm not sure of how many pixels, maybe 5 pixels it looks like. So anyways, we want to reset the margin to 0, and that takes care of that. So anytime you're doing this and you have an element that's going all the way to the side, you're going to need to do that. Okay, next thing we're going to do is we're going to take care of these 3. So we need to, that's element E. We're going to look at E. And first thing we're going to do is set it to position absolute. That will take it out of the flow of the DOM. And now we can put it wherever we want. We're also going to give it a display of flex. We're going to just, oh no, we don't need this. And then we're going to give it a gap. I don't know, I'm going to guess that's 40 pixels. Okay, and so if I didn't put that gap in here, all these would be like right next to each other, right? The gap is going to put 40 pixels between each element. Great. Okay, so next thing we need to do is we're going to specify the background color for both F and G, which is going to be this white color, which is actually pure white. Cool. We're going to look at G first. Actually, yeah, let's look at G first, so that'll make F easier. And I'm going to guess that it's a width of 60 pixels. And with width and height, you don't need to specify pixels in CSS Battle. That is the default value. So it's just going to be pixels like that. That looks correct, but this will help us see it. So now we're going to give it a border radius of 50%. And it looks a little small. So maybe 70. It's still a little small. I'm going to say 80. Okay, that looks good for now. And we're going to keep it there until we get it in place, right? So now let's look at F. So F, in order to make a half circle, all you need to do is we're going to have the same width as G. And as a matter of fact, cut down on the characters by doing something here. We can grab this, put it here, since they're the same. And then we need to give half the height, right? Like that. Last thing we need to do is give it a border radius. It says, so to make a semicircle, basically you're going to set the border top left, top right to 0. So 0, 0. And then the bottom right and bottom left are going to be whatever the smaller value is between the height and the width in pixels, right? And there you go. There's a semicircle. Cool. So last thing we need to do here before we put it in the middle here is obviously these two need to come down. So we can come in E and we can use align items, set that to flex base. I'm sorry, not flex base, flex end, excuse me. If I can spell, it'd be amazing. All right, so there you go. Now everything's looking good. Now we just need to put it in place and make sure our sizes are correct and our gaps are correct, and we're good to go. So we're in this E element again. And so, you know, always when you're positioning things, it's really handy to just use algebra, right? So we've got a height of 300 pixels, right? So half of that is 150, right? So we see the center of the circle is right at the center there, okay? And our height is 80, so if we cut that in half, we got 40, because the middle of the circle, right, is going to leave half of this. So our top right here is going to be 150 minus 40, so our top is 110, and we don't need to specify pixels for this either. Perfect. Okay, this one is a little bit trickier. We're just going to kind of have to guess. So I'm going to say left 60, definitely too far. 40. So we're going to get this edge right there, but actually, before we do that, we can already see that this gap is wrong. So let's try 50. And that looks to be right. And then we need to, because we made the gap 50, I think we just need to subtract 10. And that's correct. All right, and that's pretty close. I bet that's going to be 100% right there. Okay, so like we said, your score is based on your accuracy and your number of characters. So in order to get our character count down, right, we see here 1,094 characters. One thing you always want to do, always delete these comments. See, now we're down to 657, right? So that's really going to help our score. Then the last thing we want to do is we want to put everything on one line by deleting all this white space. So I'm just going to highlight the white space there with Command D on a Mac. And that's now going to go all on one line. And then we can highlight these divs, move over there, press delete, got that on one line. Get the div on that first line, get the style on that first line, and then finally, we come in here, grab all this white space, and we can hit delete, make sure nothing got messed up, hit delete again, there we go. Now everything's on one line. So we went from 1,000 some characters to 487. So that's going to help our score. I'm going to go ahead and submit that. There you go. 100% match. Score 603. So my previous score was 601, and I didn't delete any comments out of that one or have any white spaces. So we got 2 extra points, but it's worth doing that because sometimes it goes up 10 or 15. I'm not sure why. Sometimes it's only a couple, but whatever. Thank you for watching this video. If you want to see more videos like this, please like and subscribe to my channel. Enjoy your day.